Yo, and welcome to Piratical History with yon host, Drew Abernathy. Yar. Hey everybody, it's Drew Abernathy, and today we're heading to the Great White North to talk about the Queen of Privateering, Ingela Gathenhielm, or Gathenhielm. Not sure how to pronounce it. I'm sure someone will correct me. She was born in 1692 in Uppsala, Sweden, and she was the daughter of Olof Hamar, who was a ship owner and a privateer. In 1711, she would marry the boy next door, whose dad was a sailmaker, a ship owner, and, a privateer as well. So privateering ran deep in hers and her husband Lars's blood. Ingela's parents donated, kind of show where she stood in society. They donated a chandelier when Ingela got married to Lars, and it shows she actually came from some high social standing. And to tell Ingela's story, you also have to talk about Lars. Now, Lars was an entrepreneur. He was a ship captain, and he set up a rope business first in Uppsala, and later on he would set it up in Göteborg. I know I'm mispronouncing it. My apologies to all my friends in Sweden. And in 1710, before he made the move, he was made a captain in King Charles XII's privateering corps during their war between Sweden on one side and Norway and Denmark on the other. So he was made a privateer by the king. Pirate, privateer, just depends on who makes you what. If you make yourself one, you're a pirate. Sorry to say it, but if the king makes you one, you're a privateer. He was only 21 years old when he became captain in this privateering corps. The first ship that Lars would use for his extracurricular activities on the Baltic Sea was called the Little Hunter, and that little flag that I have down there, I designed that for Lars and Ingela, and I based it off the concept of the Little Hunter and also one of Black Bart Roberts' many flags. He would later command an armada of 50 ships and take some 80 prizes. To back channel his wares, he would go down to Dunkirk in France, and he would sell his stuff and get whatever he could for him and take it back up to Sweden, I guess, as plausible deniability, I guess. Some Swedes and other allies would accuse Lars of outright piracy, but every time they would, King Charles would step in and say, no, he's not a pirate, he's with me. So in 1711, just 4 days after his marriage, he would command the ship known as the Greyhound that had 4 cannons and 18 men, and they would take their first ship. And in 1716, Lars would suffer a hip injury, and he would then have to use crutches to get around, and he never really made it back out to sea. In 1717, he was named commander of the privateering corps, and the rest of the fleet that were amassed under King Charles XII reported back to him. And one of the reasons why he was accused of pure piracy is the fact that one of his captains, John Norcross, the Irishman, actually recruited pirates from the East Indies to work on his ships. After Lars's death, Norcross would then become a real pirate and would be imprisoned by both the Swedes and the Danes, and I think he would later die in prison in Denmark. In 1718, before he could be brought before the courts on charges of smuggling, he became terminally ill because of the old injury, would get gangrene, and he would die at the age of 29. He and Ingela would have 5 children together, and only one would make it into adulthood. So what happened to Lars's privateering business and his other business ventures after he died? They thrived. She inherited her husband's business and continued on in the privateering business, helping lead her ships to take not only Danish prizes, but also Russian prizes. And this didn't come to light until a few years later. And it appeared that after her husband died and everything kept going smoothly, it appeared that Ingela may have been the main mastermind or a joint mastermind with Lars. And she would run a bakery, a distillery, a forge, and a sailmaking company until she had to give those up in 1721. Because of all this, she would first inherit the nickname the Privateering Queen. I'm not going to try the Swedish. It's crazy. Crazy for this guy who has a hard time with languages sometimes. She ran the rope making business after all the other businesses were closed by the crown in 1721. And because of how successful she made this business, she was also nicknamed the Shipping Queen of Sweden. So after the war was over in 1721, she was one of many citizens who sued the crown over compensation for them having to be privateers or volunteering to be privateers because it costs money to run a ship, you know. Even though they amassed a fortune as privateers, she's still like, hey, you owe some money. But with all the success, a lot of jealousy happened, and also she came under a lot of litigation. And this is where her neighbor and soon-to-be husband, Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Brauwald, would come in and help her with her legal disputes. So in 1729, she would die at the age of 39. She had 4 more children with Lieutenant Colonel Brauwald, and only 2 of those would grow into adulthood. So that is the story of the Queen of Privateering, Ingela Gathenhielm. Well, abbreviated story, but glad you could join me for another episode of Piratical History, yar!